What's going on, guys? SpikeZillion here, and it's been a while, but I'm back, and I'm back with a response video of sorts, or rather a reaction. I will be as constructive as possible, obviously, to be very professional, because this guy is also very professional. You might know who he is. This guy is Tearzoo on his second channel, Zero2. And I did click like on the video, and I actually encourage everyone else to do the same. There may have been a time crunch involved, and we'll get into that. There are certain parts where it seems like there's a bit of a time crunch, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to educate him as much as possible in those places that we can educate him, because I think that's the right thing to do. I think most people will just be like, no, this is incorrect. You only need to know the reasons why. Suck my ass. I'm not really about that. There will be parts, I'm sure, where I will be like, whoa, okay, let's break this down for a moment. Or, whoa, okay, hold on, this is what is actually happening, right? We'll try to be as nice as possible here in regards to that. And the only reason I say it as nice as possible is because we have seen videos in the past that I haven't reacted, but other people have reacted to, like the Rarens of the like, and you can look at stuff like Actman's video, you know, good lord. And I'm part of his community too because of the COD community. Just so Tearzoo is aware as well, I know this is 2 minutes long of an intro, I'm sorry. But hi, I am SpikeZillion. In case you do not know who I am, I don't expect you to. I am so much smaller than you. I am a Yu-Gi-Oh player since 2022 in the modern metagame, as well as the Genesis metagame, which has come out last year. There's a new format that it came out last year. I also have in the past played COD competitively. I've also played Pokemon competitively, particularly Smogon, not as much VGC, but I have dabbled in VGC to some extent as well. And I have been playing Smash as well for the past 10 years, and I also am a tournament organizer for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and Super Smash Bros. Melee, but I particularly compete in Ultimate as a Pac-Man player. I still think it's worth noting that I have put my feet into the competitive scenes of multiple different games, and I'm sure you have as well, judging by your videos that I am a big fan of. Let's try to educate him as much as we can, while also trying to listen in and agree or disagree on some points he has. And let's watch possibly.
So if you've spent any time on card game YouTube, you've probably
hopefully
run
you guys can hear it
okay. Some sort of video in the genre of like pro from one card game rates cards from a different card game.
They're doing a lot of
and these videos are great. They're
MTG
super
to
fun to
Yu-Gi-Oh
watch.
examples.
As someone who is proficient at least in basically all of the card games.
Interesting.
They're really entertaining because you have this like sense of dramatic irony where you know the answer and they don't, and you know.
I did not know he was a
watch.
TCG player of multiple
I think
games.
What becomes apparent when you watch a lot of these is just how weird Yu-Gi-Oh is. And
I'm very curious then what games is his favorites, and I hope he puts that in this video. I'm assuming based on the videos that he showed as examples, Magic is his main game. But I'm very curious to see
how unapproachable and how like indecipherable it is, even in comparison to all the other card games, which have their own weird complexities. And
it is hard,
you know, quirks and stuff. Yu-Gi-Oh is like a uniquely difficult one for even pros from the other card games to understand.
Part of that though is because of the fact that the card text is a lot longer because there's no keywords, right? We have keywords in the game if you want to think of it that way. We still have things like we say target and we say you know, banish instead of exile. We say send versus destroy versus tribute. Things like that. Like those are all things that will go to the graveyard in all those situations, with the exception of pendulum monsters, which often can go to the extra deck face up as well. There are nuances, and like you will pick out those little keywords as you read the cards, but it's not immediately obvious like Magic is, where I'm reading like flying. I'm like, what the fuck does flying do? And then you learn what flying does. And for me, I think flying, for example, is a great example of a very confusing keyword going into Magic compared to some other keywords like haste, which is very obvious and very simple. Especially from someone coming from Yu-Gi-Oh! To Magic. I think flying is a confusing type of card versus you know, Pokemon is really simple, where it's just like put energy on this guy, beat this guy up.
And I think there's a lot of reasons for it that become pretty obvious once you watch a lot of these videos, and also when you're familiar with the game. So there's a ton of different ways I could approach this. This is going to be kind of an unscripted video, but that's kind of where I want to start.
I will also be unscripted.
Which is that when it comes to...
I like when the thoughts are raw too, because you can say stuff that's wrong and get criticized by it, but you can accept it because it's like, you know, it came out the mouth just off the dome, bro. Like, I do think that most people will react better to scripted content, though.
Pros interacting with Yu-Gi-Oh cards, the thing that they like that none of them expect, the thing that none of them anticipate, is the fact that there is no turn 2 basically ever. Like turn 2, turn 3, completely irrelevant. And so cards are always evaluated on how useful they are, either on turn 1 when you're trying to combo off and go crazy and build up the most insane board possible, or on turn 0 where your opponent is taking their first turn and you haven't even had a turn yet and you have to play on that turn. I don't even know.
Okay, now that is a very recent change. I'm gonna make it abundantly clear. Hand traps, which I'm guessing he's sort of alluding to, didn't really start causing that to happen until, like, technically, if we want to look at it really, really intensely, we could look at something like August 2022 with Tearlaments. But really, really actually playing on turn 0 for real, with multiple decks, like not just one deck, which we'll get to in a second, that would be like 2025. So I do think that this comment is a little disingenuous, because hand traps are not much different from like an instant speed card mid-chain in Magic. The difference there is that obviously there's no mana system in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I don't particularly think the game needs the mana system compared to Magic. I think Magic does have a good balance because of the mana system, but because Yu-Gi-Oh! Lacks it, I do think the game speeds up just by the inherent nature of power creep, but I do think it is somewhat interesting. It doesn't necessarily make turn 2 and 3 completely irrelevant anymore. I highly disagree with that, especially decks that do use the trap cards very effectively. Example being something like Labyrinth, which I wanted to get into later when he actually starts talking about the point of the whole video, which is trap cards. But yeah, that deck doesn't give a shit. In fact, they can play on turn 0 too. You just activate Butler effect, and Butler sets the big Welcome Labyrinth or Welcome Labyrinth, and then they pop off on Welcome Labyrinth effect. It's very annoying and very frustrating to deal with. I understand that you want to do your combo and you want to pass turn, and then your opponent can do the combo. But what you will realize is when we don't have interruption to the opponent's full combo, we will lose because the combo is so big and the board is so scary and full of negates or floodgates that you will lose. You will not play turn 2 period at all. So this discussion about turn 0 is more so a discussion about maybe 2025 specifically, where we have cards like Phimina and the Cool Tune Q, I think his name is, or I don't know, whatever. The guy that does all the shenanigans in that deck. Things like that. And I understand the sentiment, but I don't necessarily fully agree with the fact that, like, you know, Ash Blossom, for example, or Imperm, for example, is playing on turn 0, and theoretically, like, their turn 2 doesn't exist anymore, or turn 3.
How to describe it? Like turn 0, you have to be able to respond to what your opponent is doing. That's the power level of Yu-Gi-Oh! And so, like, cards are evaluated pretty much exclusively through that lens, where if you can't play them on the first or before the first turn of the game, they're completely useless, which is, like, I think a really strange headspace to try to get in if you're used to playing like Magic Gathering or Hearthstone,
sure,
or even Pokemon,
yeah,
where, like, there is a pretty obvious track and like a curve, a mana curve or whatever, where, you know, there are some good cards that are good because they're really powerful early game pieces, and there's good cards that are really powerful late game pieces, and there's bad cards in each of those categories too. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, that's not the case.
Correct. We don't have late game pieces or early game pieces. We have starters, and then we have boss monsters, right? It's not really like end game pieces. They're boss monsters at the end of the combo, right? And I do think there is a distinction there, but I also think that a good boss monster is made in such a way that it is restricted to that deck specifically, rather than something like, I don't know, Craft in most recent times, where they're like setting 50,000 flip dickheads, and then they just tribute summon Vanity's Fiend Pass anyways. Like, that's not really a boss monster. He's just a floodgate, right? Effectively, those are lame, and we don't like those in the game. And Konami's the one that's keeping them in the game, right? What the community likes is stuff like El Shaddai Construct as a final boss monster. Good example of a scary one that people were very afraid of and didn't like back in the day was like Cleafort Towers. That card was very scary and literally created the Towers term in pro player ideals for Yu-Gi-Oh. It's not a Konami sanctioned term. It's something that we believed in. So like a modern tower would be like Avermax, for example, or like a Purely Noir is in archetype boss monster. Purely Noir is one that's used only in the Purely deck, and it is a tower that is kind of frustrating for a lot of people, but it is a fair card, I would say, with an asterisk, in the sense that only that deck can really play with it. No other decks can really use it in any reasonable way. And that is, you could call it a late game thing because it's at the end of the turn, and that is the end of the game, but I don't necessarily think that's true. We don't really have stuff like that. Really, end game cards would be something like Evenly Matched or Lightning Storm, like board breakers in our game, if anything. We don't really have like end game monsters, really. Maybe like Tifon, as in like the I lose monster, but that's about it.
Yu-Gi-Oh! It is purely like a turn 0, turn 1 game. Obviously, there is like games do go to turn 3 in that like you're not allowed to attack on the first turn, but usually turn 3 is kind of a formality. Like you have to be able to just bulldoze someone on the third turn. With all the monsters that you've already stacked up ready to attack them. If you're not already prepared for that, like turn 3 is like not relevant. You've already lost. So
sure,
it's a super interesting card game. It's very unique. I don't like it, to be honest. I think it's very weird, and it has resulted in a lot of things becoming just completely irrelevant about the game. And the number one thing that bothers me about it is that trap cards fall into that category. Trap cards fall into the category of things that have been completely erased by the speed of the game. Trap cards you cannot use on your first turn of the game. You have to set them down. There's a few exceptions to that, but we're not talking about those. In general, trap cards,
I think we should mention them, and I do think that not mentioning them moves away from the topic exceptions at hand. I think like him showing Mirror Force obviously is like, it's a funny example, and I think people will like clown on him for using Mirror Force as an example, but like you gotta, and I do think I would use a better example than that for like a newer card maybe, like, but like I get it, you know, you gotta use Mirror Force as the example because it was one from day one, and well, not day one, but like it was like the second set ever I think was Mirror Force, or third set ever Mirror Force was in there, so I get it, right? It's an early DM era Yu-Gi-Oh staple, and is no longer really a popular staple anymore because there are other cards in the game. If you want to use an example of a card that is a trap card that does see play and has to be set in some way, shape, or form, but can be abused in such a way that it can be used earlier than its intended time, look no further than a card like Daruma Karma Cannon in the Labyrinth deck. The reason why I mention this card in particular is because, again, in Lab, they have ways to make it so that they can flip the card this turn. Same with Man with the Mark. That whole deck where they have Temple of the Kings says you can flip one trap the turn it was set. So if you want to do Daruma Karma Cannon's effect that turn, you absolutely could. Would I recommend that particular card? Not really. Sometimes it depends on what kind of deck you're facing, but it might be worth it. But most of the time, you're going to want to go for something like Big Welcome Labyrinth or Welcome Labyrinth and Labyrinth, or you'll go with the Apophis traps instead in the Man with the Mark deck. Realistically, though, if the option presents itself, you might as well go for it, because if you don't have Nibiru in hand, yeah, you might actually lose the game because of the amount of summons happening on the other side of the field.
As you have to set them down, which means they're not useful on your when you're trying to go crazy first turn, and they're not useful.
But the cards that you can activate from the hand. Sorry, I forgot to mention those. So Imperm is a big one. Tachyon Transmigration if you have a Galaxy Tachyon monster. Featherstorm, which just got banned. My personal favorite, of course, because I play Harpies. Like actually the Harpy deck. Dominus Impulse, Dominus Purge, Dominus Spiral now. And Dominus Spark is the new one that's just about to come out in the OCG. All those are brand new. All those are just coming out in the last like year and a half-ish. So it's still like new to us. So don't be fooled. That is new territory for us still.
In interrupting
Imperm is the only one that was old
when you haven't even had a chance to play yet.
Imperm 2017 or 18.
They've been basically like kind of stealth replaced by something called hand traps.
Correct.
Now, hand traps
also quick play spells too, but yes,
are basically like they're usually like monster abilities in Yu-Gi-Oh, where you discard them to activate their ability, and that ability, that effect, is itself basically a trap card. Like the most important trap card in Yu-Gi-Oh is a card called Ash Blossom, which basically says counter the next time, negate the next time your opponent would try to search their deck. The next ability.
I'm very curious what this looks like. Discard Ash Blossom. Counter target spell or ability with search your library or draw in its card text. Okay, yeah.
Negate
I guess
the
that
next time your opponent would try to search their deck. The next ability, next whatever spell, or like spell card, monster effect, whatever. If it results in them looking through their deck, you can shut that down. Or even just drawing, I think you can shut down too. I don't know. That's kind of
draw is a bigger example of that.
But in general, like the fact
like
that is one of the most important going second cards is pretty weird. And I think it shows pretty much exactly how insane Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten.
Sure.
But there's a lot more that I want to say about
That card's old
Yu-Gi-Oh.
now, by the way. That's like 2018, I think. It's almost 8 years old, I think. Could be already 8 years old, which is horrifying. And now people are thinking about putting it to 2 copies because Max C is getting banned in the OCG and Master Duel.
Oh, I mean, the turn 0, turn 1 format of it is, I think, a big problem that keeps players away from the game. But there's a ton of other weird things about Yu-Gi-Oh that I think I want to talk about too. So I watched a video recently by a channel called Team APS. These are a group of dudes that make Yu-Gi-Oh content, and one of the ones that they posted recently
very casual content,
a sort of long form, almost like podcasty type video titled "Which Summoning Mechanic Killed Yu-Gi-Oh?"
Haven't watched the video yet.
It was interesting to see them kind of run through all of the different like summoning mechanics and how they were received upon release.
My guess is pen.
Thing. Let me get some water. Just kidding. Water's for losers. We got A&W 0, and it's tasty.
I disagree with that sentiment. Sparkling water is fucking awesome.
Anyway, okay, so the summoning mechanics. These are, I think, the most unique and special thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, I said the fact that I said that the whole turn 0, turn 1 format thing was unique. That's uniquely bad. What's uniquely good about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the extra deck. The extra deck mechanics are what make it definitively unique and cool and special. I think it's one of the most innovative aspects of the game that other card games, as far as I know, don't really have.
Sure.
Magic doesn't really have anything like it except for kind of like the Command Zone.
I wouldn't even consider Command Zone like that.
I don't think Pokemon has
it's
anything
what
like that.
brings
Hearthstone
consistency into Yu-Gi-Oh.
doesn't really count. But
it is our
over
lands.
the years, they've introduced a ton of new extra deck mechanics.
Lands bring you consistency.
In doing so, I think they've kind of like
they bring you
lost
joy.
the plot a bit in terms of like what they're actually doing. So the first two mechanics, the first two summoning mechanics in Yu-Gi-Oh, right from the get-go, right from the jump, was ritual summoning and fusion summoning. So ritual summoning wasn't from the extra deck, but I'm going to include it anyway because it should have been. And also because it is.
You know what though? I actually okay. Not that I agree, but I think it's in retrospect, it's definitely the one that is really poorly designed today. They're really doing stuff that I really don't like with ritual monsters these days, and they really keep trying to push that envelope. And I think it's like, I actually like Miracle Raven though. I think Miracle Raven is a really cool card, and I like that it is part of the ritual strategies because it's a generic ritual card that is helping every ritual deck in the past. It is not something like Low, which was like, oh yeah, you can just use me for the entire tribute of this guy that's an Omni Negate and is also untargetable because I have this continuous spell that says suck my dick, can't touch me. So it's just like obnoxious, right? I just don't really love this whole like playfulness of some of the archetypes lately, where it's like, you know, obviously Habakiri is the one I can think of immediately. It's like, dude, Habakiri is one of the greatest ritual monsters, like literally ever. I think it is the best ritual monster ever because it's actually just the best combo starter ever, and then it has a really good lingering effect of make your opponent lose 800 attack, or all your monsters lose 800 attack rather. And then all three of the Mitsurugi monsters, when they're sent to grave, they search and then special themselves back. That's sadistic. Obviously, they have to be tributed for that, but most things that would remove them without them triggering, or the other guys from triggering, or their back row from triggering, would tribute them. With like some exceptions being like Raigeki or whatever. So it's really annoying. And I think Ritual, in retrospect, was probably better to be in the extra deck in the first place, because then they wouldn't have made stuff like pre-prep, or I don't know, like Miracle Raven's fine, right? But I think like Drytron even in its entirety would have been made a completely different way. I think that it would have been balanced a little bit better in a good way at the start, and then in the long run, as we get to 2025, I think that some of these other stupid cards wouldn't have been printed this way so that they can keep up with meta threats, or be the best meta threat in the game during 2025.
Like one of the first unique mechanics. Anyway, those two things.
We'll talk about fusions
and rituals.
I'm still listening.
Made like intuitive sense. So diegetic game mechanics are game mechanics which like have in-universe explanations for why the code in the game is written a certain way, or why the math in the game works out this way, or that sort of thing. Like for example, like in, I don't know, Call of Duty or Halo, the sniper rifle does more damage than the pistol.
What are we talking about?
That? Like,
I don't disagree with him. I'm just wondering why we're talking about COD. I would not compare a shooter to a Yu-Gi-Oh! And here's why. I've gone on and made a script about this, actually, about this exact conversation. When I went from Smash to Yu-Gi-Oh!, one of the things I realized immediately is that the pacing of both the games are completely different. In Smash, when you get hit and you're in disadvantage, you have to think right away. There is no, give me a moment, let me think about this and look through my options. No, it is, you must make the decision right fucking now, and if you fuck up, you die. That's it. COD, pretty similar. Generally speaking, like you will just have to make micro little decisions as you go along, especially with movement, with strafing, Obviously, like you're aiming as well. Obviously, when you're in a gunfight, things like that. If you're in a healing situation, you got to make that quick decision whether or not you're gonna stay back for a sec to heal, or if you're gonna just charge on or throw a grenade or throw flash or whatever, right? Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have a flashbang, dude. There is no flashbang. You just fucking do the thing, but you have to take your time and consider your options because your opponent might have something further. That's why people always ask all the time, cards in hand, all the time. Then they look at how many sets you have. They ask what the cards do. Like, you can't just, like, ask, oh, what's the TTK of your MP5, sir? By the time you say that, they fucking killed you. So this is not a comparable discussion, but I want to hear what he says anyways, because this is one thing that's, like, kind of strange. But yeah, let's hear it.
The pistol. Why is that? Like, why are the numbers higher for the sniper rifle bullet than for the pistol bullet? And the reason is because that's meant to reflect the real world reality, which is that sniper rifle bullets can do more damage than a pistol can. They can travel faster, they can travel farther, they have more kinetic energy in them, and so they take out more of your health bar when they hit you, that type of thing. A similar thing is true with Yu-Gi-Oh! So like fusions, it's in the name. Everyone understands what's going on with a fusion. You're taking two creatures or potentially more and combining them into a new one. Like Gaia the Fierce Knight and Curse of Dragon combine into Gaia the Dragon Champion.
The way he's talking about it, it sounds like he's talking about synchro summoning, though, which is really funny because I imagine that's what's going to come up next, and I think he's going to complain about it. Based on what I'm hearing so far, my preemptive guess is that he's going to complain about synchro summoning. I have not watched up to this point. Synchro summoning is kind of like this, except with fusion summoning, you usually require a third card in order to make the fusion summon happen, or you need effects on one of these two cards in order to make the fusion monster in question. And the fusion monster in question usually requires at least one material that is exact and then another generic card, unless it's like really broken good, which doesn't happen very often. Usually it's a little more specific.
Instead of riding his usual horse, and this makes him slightly stronger than usual. A similar thing is true of ritual summoning. Like, it's a little bit more high concept, but I think most people
it's harder to understand rituals
of like doing a sort of dark
It's
ritual.
like tribute summoning, though. It's similar to tribute summoning, but I think it gets a little more confusing because tribute summoning is, if it's level 5 or 6, you tribute one monster on your side of the field, you get to normal summon your level 5 or 6 monster effectively as a tribute summon, okay? The tribute summon is your normal summon for the turn. You have only one normal summon per turn, unless you have an effect that says otherwise, okay? Level 7 or higher, however, requires 2 tributes, so you need to tribute 2 monsters on your side of the field, 2 normal summon, and again, same thing, it is your normal summon is your tribute summon, and it's tribute summoning a level 7 or higher monster in this case. Ritual summoning, you could make a ritual summon of like a level 5 by tributing like 5 level 1 monsters if you wanted to. As long as that is possible, with the effect on the ritual effect of either the monster or spell or trap that says so, then you can do that, right? So anyway,
well, I think it makes
it's very confusing for
sort
some
of
people
intuitive
still,
sense
though,
that there would be some
people get it
monsters that
confused with
have
tribute summoning.
like a higher expectation of what's being offered to them in exchange for being able to call them forth in battle.
Correct.
It's not exactly as like obvious as fusions, but it's way more obvious than any other ones. Okay, so like those two right from the jump, people got what was going on. Like most high level monsters, you had to summon by just tributing lower level monsters or any monster really. So to summon Blue Eyes White Dragon, summon Skull, Dark Magician, you had to sacrifice monsters on your side of the field in order to bring them out.
Okay, so he understands what tributing is. Tribute summoning.
That on some level makes sense that some monsters like expect some level of like honor or like sustenance or something in order to grace your board with their presence. And the ritual monsters are just like kind of an extra step on top of that. Like you had to really go through the motions if you wanted to be able to bring them into the fight. Like if you wanted to summon Blackluster Soldier, you couldn't just sacrifice like 2 little chump monsters. You had to sacrifice at least one like really big monster. You had to sacrifice a level 8 or higher creature or multiple, but like the offering had to be sufficient or whatever. Like you can kind of make a diegetic in-universe explanation as to why those monsters could only be summoned through that type of means. But as far as I can tell, like none of the other summoning mechanics have any sort of explanation. Like, okay, so first...
That's because that is something that is in the Yu-Gi-Oh rulebooks and is inherently something that you have to learn prior to even beginning the game. And I understand that from a perspective like his, where I assume that he is around my age. I am born in 1996. Are you born in 1996, Tearsu? Please let me know, okay? Because I can hear you, okay? I watched up to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and then quit watching the anime, okay? If you are with me, I understand where you're coming from. And when I started watching SEMO series of Progression series, and I was watching Edison format where they're playing with synchro monsters, I too thought, what the fuck is going on? I get it, okay? I get it. But you have to take it from the perspective that you will have to learn the rules of the game, and there are these summoning mechanics, and if you want to play the game in Modern, you will have to learn these mechanics at some point, and the best way to learn them is to literally play decks that use the summoning mechanics. I promise you, it becomes way less annoying when you actually start learning how to do it in an environment that is your friend trying to teach you, and I would be glad to teach you. If you would like to learn, I would be more than happy to be your teacher. I love teaching people. Please do. In fact, you've taught me a lot about animals. Let me teach you about Yu-Gi-Oh! Please.
There's synchro summoning, which uses a tuner monster, which is just like a new mechanic that they added to the game after the original series had its run. You know, they got through the Duelist, the original Yu-Gi-Oh! They got through Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and they're like, well, we need to do something else.
Okay, so he knows after GX. Okay.
We're gonna add these tuner monsters, and these tuner monsters can be sacrificed from your field alongside other monsters, and as long as they're level on the monsters, which, if we're being honest, the levels like the levels also never seem to really matter, other than like once you hit a certain level you had to sacrifice, and once you hit a certain level beyond that you had to sacrifice more. That's all that there was. Like there was no meaningful difference between like a level 5 and a level 6, or a level 7 and a level 8, or upwards beyond that, really.
That is untrue for Synchro specifically. And Xyz too. That is untrue for both. In fact, it's also technically untrue for Ritual as well, in the same vein. Ritual is not that different from Synchro Summoning, with the exception that you will require a Ritual spell to activate the effect. If you want to look at it another way, Synchro Summoning is like Tribute Summoning, except you're doing addition rather than looking at the Synchro monster at face value. If I look at Stardust Dragon as a Tribute Summonable monster, like he's Blue Eyes White Dragon, yeah, obviously that's going to be confusing because I just used 2 monsters, whoop-de-doo, and I summon the guy. But, like, I can use 2 level 1s to make Blue Eyes. I cannot use 2 level 1s to make Stardust. I need a level 7 and a level 1, and one of those has to be a tuner monster, right? So you do have to go 7 plus 1 equals 8, and if you don't know basic math, I know he does. He definitely does. I know he does. But if you don't know basic math, go back to elementary school. I'm sorry, that's a tough one.
Tuner monsters, it was never really clear what made a monster a tuner.
That is definitely not fucking true. That's crazy. Okay, Tearsu, I'm going to teach you, okay? I have Dueling Book up on another tab. Okay, I'm going to teach you what a tuner is, okay? I'm going to teach you. Do I have one on screen? Technically, I do. This is a hand trap. In fact, you showed a tuner earlier. This is a hand trap, okay? Now, this hand trap has this nice little thing right in here. It says a zombie, so that's the type. The attribute is wind, but it's a zombie, so it's a type zombie. It is also a tuner, which is what we call a subtype in the game. You can also look up a tuner in this handy dandy simulator that Konami definitely for sure knows about and loves very much. By clicking monster and then tuner, and then you click search, and boom, we have all these monsters that say tuner beside their type. All of them say it. Some of them also might not say anything beside tuner on the right side, which means that they're a vanilla monster. So this is a machine tuner monster, for example, that is a vanilla monster. It just has flavor text. That's it. But then there's plenty of other ones that have all sorts of tuning shenanigans going on. They got all sorts of stuff. So it is very clear which ones are tuners. You just have to, obviously keep track of that in your own deck. It doesn't necessarily have to be from your opponent's deck. There is also a way for you to find that out too, though. Yeah, see that? So there's a little symbol there. The green tuning symbol, that represents that it is a tuner monster. So with that in mind, that's how you can see it in Master Duel. And then, in a normal TCG card, you'll see that these ones don't say tuner next to them, but this one, in fact, does. So there you go. That is how you know.
It was never really clear why they were able to be sacrificed alongside other monsters of a particular level in order to bring forth Stardust Dragon.
The way you would do that as well, in case that's also unclear, every single synchro monster, this is a synchro monster, who also happens to be a tuner, which is very funny, requires one tuner, or it'll declare what it needs. This specific monster needs one tuner plus one or more non-tuner monsters. So it's a 5. Theoretically speaking, I could make this using this little girl plus 2 level 1 non-tuner monsters. And that would equal 5. It has to equal 5 because this guy is level 5. It cannot exceed level 5 in order to make this guy. I have to make it exactly 5 stars between the 3 cards if I use 2 level 1s and then a level 3. Or I could use a level 3 and a level 2, as long as one of them is a tuner. In this case, she is a tuner. So this level 3 tuner and then a level 2 monster in order to make this guy. So that's how that works.
Or whatever else, like, synchro monster you wanted, Ice Barrier Dragon or whatever. Like, what was it about them that made it so you could do that?
That's his name. Thank you very much.
I
Brianna.
assumed at first that it was so they were called tuners, and so it was tuning as like you would tune an engine. They were like mechanics. They were the little grunts that
I think that's why they made the Synchrons.
Other creatures and then build on themselves. I think the first synchro monster I saw was Junk Warrior, which used junk synchron.
Yeah.
And so it was like they were synthesizing the junk onto themselves to become a more powerful creature. And so it wasn't really like a ritual, and it wasn't really, it was more of a fusion, but it was like more of like improvised fusions. Like the tuner monster was like kind of just grabbing whatever it could get around itself from the scraps of other creatures that you just sacrifice in order to build on itself to become something greater. Like that made sense for a few of the monsters, like Junk Warrior, but none of the other ones really. Like you could make Stardust Dragon out of any 2 monsters as long as one of them was a tuner and their levels added up to 8. Why?
Okay, so he knows how it works. He just doesn't like it, I guess. He's asking why. I mean, that's just what they wanted to do, man. Konami thought it was a good idea, and I'll be honest with you, I don't really like synchron monsters either, or synchro monsters rather. I don't really like them either. I think they usually make them way too fucking good. But most of the time, I think that they're balanced enough where it's okay, and I think the mechanic is easy enough to understand. And I think that back in the day in Edison format, which would have been April 2010 format, I think that format showcases a good example of how fun synchro monsters can be versus the other types of decks that were using ritual, fusion, or none of the above, which I think was arguably the worst decision. Was anything that was doing none of the above were the most annoying most of the time, and it's still are today most of the time. Interesting how that works. Anyways,
and I think so my assumption was the whole tuning thing, like you would tune a machine, but because it's called synchronization, I think it's more like they're trying to invoke the idea of like tuning a song or like an instrument or like a tuning fork.
Yeah.
Like, it's about synchronizing the frequencies.
That's why they have the
like
resonators.
you would for a sound, and like matching
They
the
have the tuning
resonance of
fork.
two different entities in order to, like, but why does that result in a totally different thing? It never really made intuitive sense. I don't know. I've asked
They just
Yu-Gi-Oh
wanted to do
players,
it, man.
like, so what are you doing when you're synchronizing synchro summoning? What does that mean? Like, you know what fusing means. You know why 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons makes Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, a 3-headed Blue Eyes White Dragon.
We're boomer talking. Hold on. We know what fusion summoning does, Tirzu, because you grew up with Yu-Gi-Oh! DM era and GX, as did I. We know what fusion summoning does, and I'm sure you're going to mention specifically, if I had to guess, something like I guess you already mentioned Gaia the Dragon Champion. Something like Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, or like Thousand Eyes Restrict or something. You're gonna mention something like that, and then, you know, for synchro wise, like, you'll probably mention like, it won't equate to, Stardust Dragon. It's so much scarier, and I don't even know how to make this thing, or something like that, right? And I get it, man. Synchro summoning is something that was past our time, but now coming back to it in 2022 for myself, February 2022, it is now almost my 4-year anniversary with the game, right? I now understand how it works almost too well, and I can name examples of cards that cheat out the synchro system, which I think you're going to also mention in your video probably. And I do think that synchro summoning is very straightforward and easy to understand, but only because I took the time to learn how the game functions mechanically.
Get what that is about. You get why Dragon Master Knight, a fusion of Blackluster Soldier and Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which is literally just Blackluster Soldier riding Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. You get what's going on there. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out. Okay, but synchro summoning, what is it? And it's a similar thing with the mechanic that came directly after synchro summoning, which is, I think, Xyz summoning, XYZ. I'm not exactly sure how to say it. I think it's Xyz summoning.
That is my favorite summoning mechanic, for the record. Xyz is the best summoning mechanic in my personal opinion. It's also probably the easiest to understand once you've done it. It's another one. It's like Pikmin, man. I know you know what Pikmin is, okay? You don't learn how to play Pikmin by watching Pikmin. You have to play the game, okay? You have to play the game to understand Pikmin, okay? You can't just learn Xyz by watching it. You have to do it yourself, and then you're like, oh, wow, that's insanely dumbass easy, and I love doing it. Wow, it's amazing. So basically, okay, I'm going to show you what Xyz is, okay? I'm going to demonstrate it to you really fast. In fact, this deck does a lot of it. Look at all these black cards. Those are Xyz. Okay, I'm going to show you really quick. We're going to show you. I'm in a normal summon Heartbeat Channeler. I'm going to activate its effect. Don't worry about it. We're gonna just do the effect. We're going to do it so that all the Yu-Gi-Oh players don't get mad at me, okay? We summon Harpy Lady 1. Again, Yu-Gi-Oh players don't get mad at me, okay? We have 2 level 4s on the field. What I'm going to do is there's this button called Overlay. I'm going to slap these 2 cards on top of each other like an idiot sandwich. Okay, Gordon Ramsay up in this bitch. And then we're going to look at one of our Xyz monsters. Now, we have a couple here, okay? We have one here that's called Lightning Chidori. This is a classic card from about 10 years ago now, I think, okay, or more, that says 2 level 4 wind monsters. As you can see, both the monsters are wind that I have underneath, that I will have underneath Lightning Chidori, okay? These are 2 wind monsters that are level 4. 2 level 4 wind monsters is what I require. I will then slap on, by clicking OL attack, Lightning Chidori on top of the 2 cards. We have now made the idiot sandwich. Congratulations, you have now made Lightning Chidori. It is that simple. I swear it's that simple. That is a particularly complicated card too. 2 level 4 wind monsters is very infrequent. If you want another, a more like common example of like any generic monster, this guy literally just has 2 level 4 monsters. It cannot be easier. 2 level 4 monsters. So we're going to make the idiot sandwich. We overlay them on top of each other, and then we overlay into Tornado Dragon. That is an Xyz summon. We have conducted an Xyz summon, and then now this guy is a Mystical Space Typhoon. I know you know what that card is, because that card's old as fuck. I know you know what that shit is, and this is Mystical Space Typhoon, okay? That's what this card does. Now, that is what Xyz summoning is. And this is not a level, this is called a rank. You can also tell that it's a different type of leveling, because the stars are on the left side rather than the right side, okay? Just so you know.
But it's like you overlay two monsters that have the same level. Again, with
God damn it, he knows what it is. I don't know why he keeps framing it like he doesn't know what it is. You know what it is, man.
Meant anything at first. They were like a sort of ad hoc, like, or post hoc addition to the game, because they were meant to like reflect mana in Magic the Gathering, because Yu-Gi-Oh itself was basically just like an anime version of Magic. That's how it was in the original manga.
I guess.
I'm not exactly a manga expert, I've never read it, but that's the explanation I've read from other people, is that Yu-Gi-Oh was just heavily inspired, and
sounds like a Reddit response. Not from him. I'm saying from other people.
Never really meant anything, and they were really more meant to reflect like a mana cost, similar to Magic the Gathering. But they never, because there's no mana in Yu-Gi-Oh, they couldn't really do that, and so they had to like figure out, even though like all these cards had level values that were mana values, because there was no mana, they had to figure out something else to do with that, and so they just like started using it in other summoning mechanics. And like use it as like not quite a resource, but a sort of thing you had to finesse around, and something you had to keep track of, even though it also wasn't super intuitive. You can totally see how the
you have to understand, Ray, is that time goes on, and they wanted to make a new mechanic to entice players and make things more interesting, mix things up, make some other cards that don't use the fusion summoning mechanic or the synchro summoning mechanic, make them relevant and do something interesting, right? You gotta like think. Like, Sangan is literally from, I think, the second set in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, literally ever, and Sangan got a second lease on life because Xyz summoning existed. Right? You normal summon Tour Guide of the Underworld, you use her effect to summon Sangan from your deck, and then you overlay into the guy. Right? And then you detach Sangan, and Sangan has an effect. Okay? That the Sangan literally got errataed because of Xyz. That's how crazy shit got. But and I get it. It sounds like power creep went a little too far at that point. But I think that at the end of the day, the game's going to have power creep, and the amount of power creep that they have really depends on Konami's ability to write cards, whether they write them like monkeys or they write them like the geniuses that they can be, right? And they can do a well-balanced game. They have in the past, but sometimes they have written cards like monkeys and then have had to ban cards. Okay, there is the reason for the ban list, and it is what it is. We are in an eternal eternal format, and so at the end of the day, these cards that we have from 2002, we want to use them again if we can. And I understand where you're coming from with wanting Mirror Force to be the same way, but unfortunately, like on it's not that the card is bad. It's that the battle phase is bad. It's not nearly as relevant as it used to be, so therefore Mirror Force became irrelevant by that fact. And so when the battle phase is relevant again, which it was for a short stint, it was with Tenpai, then Mirror Force does come back for a short stint. It's not a bad card, it is inherently just not good right now, which is not ever a bad thing. There are cards that go in and out of the format all the time. Droll and Lockbird, once upon a time, wasn't a card that people wanted banned. There was a point in time where Droll and Lockbird was like a 25-cent card, I think. At last I checked, back in the day, it wasn't that relevant, right? Nowadays, even in 2022, I think Droll wasn't super big. It was like, you know, I think it went for like $120 for the really pretty one. Went down to like $50, and then it went back up to like 120 after it became relevant again, like a year later. So, you know, take it from me, I understand where you're coming from, man, but like you gotta think about the big picture, right? And if you don't play the game enough to see the big picture, then like play the game. I can't explain it any further.
System on the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh was meant to be mana. If you play any of the early video games, one of my favorites is one called Duelist of the Roses, and in that game, like, you literally like accumulate mana every turn. If you spend it, it
Once
goes
again,
away. But
you're
if
showing
you
your
don't summon any
DM. You're
monsters
showing your
for a
DM
turn,
era. You're
you
showing
gain more the following turn, and so you can bring out an even bigger monster the next turn than you would have been able to previously. Yeah, like it's clear that's the direction they originally wanted to go.
For me, it was False-Bound Kingdom,
and
which wasn't even really Yu-Gi-Oh.
You know, they kind of screwed themselves by implementing their first rulebook, which didn't really involve levels hardly at all. But the developers of the video games were able to kind of rectify that issue and make a much more playable, much more intuitive version of the level system in the video games. And I wish they'd gone in more of that direction for the real game, because it makes way more sense. It gives them way more freedom to design cards. You know, there's cards that like in the game literally like give you mana. Like there's like I think there's like a flip effect monster that like gives you bonus mana. There's like spell cards that do that. So it totally makes sense for the level system to be mana. It doesn't have to be like literally exactly like Magic the Gathering, where you play a land and you have mana, or like Hearthstone, where you just get an additional one every turn. There could be a cool way to do it, but like there being a resource in the game was clearly like the intention, and they just didn't end up going that route, and that resulted in the massive chaos that is Yu-Gi-Oh now. Anyway,
I do think though that is just like the extra deck and how you said that's a unique form of the game. I do think that Yu-Gi-Oh not having a mana system is also a unique form of the game. The mana system is the effects on the card saying that you can only activate the effect of Cast Your Ephemeral once per turn, right? Hard once per turn, or once per turn colon this, that, right? The soft once per turn. Those are your manas. And I do think that that is inherently interesting. When cards don't have once per turn, that's when things get a little scary, and they can be dangerous. A card like Habakiri is such a good card that it says once per duel for the effect in particular that makes it such a powerful card. So keep that in mind.
So like that, I have no idea. Like I know what a synchronization. I know what the word synchronization at least means. I know what tuning at least means. Mm-hmm. But as far as I can tell, XYZ is just a made-up string of letters. You know, the last three letters of the alphabet makes a new word, I guess. And so what that is, I'm not sure. And it's just like there's so many other directions they could have gone with Yu-Gi-Oh in order to like make new ideas for new card types. You know, if they wanted to do the whole space theme, they could have done like a sort of Gundam, like mech warrior type thing, where like you could have certain creatures pilot this like mech creature, mech beast, robot thing. You know, you could like put creatures inside of the driver's seat of other cards. That would make sense.
I'm gonna blow your mind right now, Tirzu. I'm gonna blow your mind, okay? And you know what's funny about that is it's literally an Xyz deck. This deck right here. Look up Super Quant, and I think you're going to be very happy. This is literally Power Rangers, okay, with Gundams. You're welcome, okay? This is literally Ultron, okay? Look up this deck, and please play this deck. This is a very funny deck, okay? It's not amazing, but it's a very funny deck. Also, you could look at Cosmo for an example of a deck that is kind of self-contained and doesn't necessarily play with Xyz at all. It actually doesn't play with the extra deck much at all, period. But Cosmo is another great example of a deck that kind of has like, you have the little pilots and then they transform into the big giant spaceships. It's pretty awesome. You could technically also look at Sky Striker, although this one makes me want to puke, so don't play this if you want to get laid. Don't play this. Okay, thanks. Anyway, continue.
Magic the Gathering eventually did something like that. But no, it's just like a new creature type that has like limited use abilities, and the number of times you can use them is like the number of monsters that you've stacked under the card.
For the most part. That's not fully true.
Why? Again, it's just like, who decided? How does this make any sense?
It's the most balanced extra deck type too. I don't know why we're having this conversation. Fusion is fucked up now. I don't know if you realize, man. Branded I made a 36-minute video on Branded. Go watch that video. This video is already getting long enough, okay? It's almost twice the length of that video. I know your ass is watching that video. Please go watch that video. I'm telling you, that deck is nonsensical, and that shit is all fusion. That is literally the one that you're hearkening back to. I don't think that fusion is a particularly good example of a extra deck type that is balanced in any reasonable way. It too also got fucked by the fact that now we're using the deck as fusion material. We don't need the fusion material on the field or in the hand anymore. They just do whatever the fuck they want. They can shuffle back from the graveyard with Tearlaments, right? We have stepped so far from God in Fusion World that I don't think Xyz or Synchro would have prevented that. I genuinely think that would have happened regardless of the existence of any other extra deck type. Xyz is the one that is the most balanced inherently because they have the mana system there in the terms of materials. And decks that or card types that don't actually use the material to do their effects are the ones that end up being more toxic overall. A great example of that being something like Cyber Dragon Infinity, which attaches the cards as material once per turn, and then detaches to negate the activation and destroy the card that it's trying to negate.
You know, it makes it all the more difficult in order to explain to a new player, like, why are you allowed to do this? Pendulum summoning, I'm not even going to get into because it's too silly.
No! Do it!
Nobody likes it.
Shut up, I do! I love Pendulum! Self-core best deck!
Even the people who made the game have basically tried to bury it.
Whatever, man.
And then beyond that, there's Link summoning, which, as far as I can tell, is just tribute summoning from the extra deck.
Kinda, yeah. Just like Synchro summoning. Interesting, eh? Interesting. Now, again, you do need the specific proper card type, so I'm going to give you an example. Let me see if I have the list. Do I have the Lightsworn list still? Oh, I have Malice list, even though those cards are like super duper banned. Or not all of them, but some of them are super duper hit. Okay. Okay, here's an example. This Link 3 monster, which means that it needs at least 3 Link material, or it needs like a Link 2 plus another Link material on top of that, so another effect monster or something, okay? Requires 2+ monsters, including a Malice monster. So, I could use a Link 2 and an effect monster to make this guy, as long as one of them is a Malice monster, or what I could do is I could use 3 monsters, including at least 1 Malice monster, like this little girl, Alice in Wonderland looking ass bitch. Okay? So you could use this in addition to, like, I don't know, Harpy Chandler you saw earlier in the Harpy Lady 1, and you could make White Binder, right? This card here. Okay? Now, there are some easier ones. Access code is extremely easy. It is 2+ effect monsters, so you could use a Link 3 plus 1 effect monster. As long as you can go 3 + 1 = 4, then yes, you can make the Link 4. You know, you can't just go... you can also go a Link 2 plus a Link 2 as long as they're effect monsters as well. So if it's 2 Link 2s, so for example, Moon of the Closed Heaven and SP Lone Light are both Link and effect monsters, right? So you can use this guy and this guy, 2 + 2 = 4, and therefore we can make Access Code Talker. Very simple. Very, very simple. It is like tributing. It is similar, except for the fact that it doesn't take up your normal summon, so it's literally better.
Which really makes it shows how far power creep has gotten, where
Sure.
like you don't even
I think the
draw
fact that it's more
Summon
simple,
Skull
though,
now.
makes
you just
it
always have it in
more
your hand,
enticing.
except it's not Summon Skull, it's like the craziest, most overpowered creatures the game has ever seen.
That was going to
And you
happen
just
regardless of the extra deck types. I'm going to be $100.
always have access to them. As long as you've got the materials on the field, you can just bring them out from nowhere.
And that's Konami's fault, not a fault of the actual extra deck types themselves. That is straight up Konami being like, I want your fucking money. Give me your money. You will get these broken dumbass cards because you want it, and you will give us money to do that.
You don't have to ever draw them. So, and again, it's just like, why is it Link? I'm not really sure. It has a sort of like cybernetic, like you're pulling something from like the internet or like the cloud.
Hence
like
the cybers type,
digital
correct?
space. It's not exactly clear why you're able to link two creatures together, two monsters together, and then that becomes, I don't know, Nightmare Phoenix or whatever the heck.
Oh shit!
But
Yo, you know, Nightmare Phoenix.
It's
Okay.
so
Two
far
monsters with
beyond,
different names.
like,
That's what you need for it.
I attribute 3 monsters to bring out Slifer the Sky Dragon. That took me 15 turns to set up. Like, now you just
Okay, now
do
you
whatever.
can
And
do
there's
it.
so
You
many
can
creatures-
do it in one turn now. Let's not get it twisted. You can now do that in one turn. You can. Now Slifer is the worst one of the three, I think. Maybe the second worst now, because I think Obelisk is now. I don't know. Is Obelisk better? I'm not sure. Raw is by far the best of the three. Raw has like so much support, it's stupid, and Raw is the easiest one to make in turn 1 by far. You will probably make it in turn 2 though, because you want to kill your opponent. But yeah, this is very funny to hear.
that like when you play them, it just happens. You're able to get another one from your deck. It's a whole mess. It's totally wild. But as a whole, Yu-Gi-Oh's extra deck mechanic is really cool, and I feel like if they were to start over, which they really should start over, like trying to build on the mess that is
They're
modern
kind
Yu-Gi-Oh!
of doing that with Genesis.
It feels impossible. And I know it sounds ridiculous to ask a major corporation to start their game over, but they've done it before. Like they've tried several times with like, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links and
Not the same
Rush
thing.
Duel and Speed Duel and all these other things. Like they've
Not the
reset
same
the
thing
game back to nothing.
Well,
And
Speed Duel kind of was that, except they basically were like, oh, you like the anime? Okay, you want them to have dumb abilities like the anime? Yeah, here you go. They kept the same card text. Duel Links is just Speed Duel in a phone, and they control the printing of the cards in such a strange way. So they could control the power creep in that way, but like it eventually also became cock and ball torture too. And so for what it's worth, Genesis is their best way so far of trying to balance the format by giving everything a point total. I think it's a very good way of going about it, and I think they're doing a good job at it. Alternatively, you could also look at the ban list as being part of that balance as well, where if they did ban more cards, which they have gravitated towards over the years, the more cards they ban, the closer we come back to reality, and we come back to a down-to-earth game. And they have been doing that over time, especially with trying to unify the ban list first from Japan to America. So then hopefully things like card prices could be a little more fair compared to Japan, because in the US and in Canada, card prices are fucking ridiculous compared to Japan. It's crazy. Look up the price charting for Fiendsmith Engraver, for example, over the last 2 years versus the OCG, which is the Japanese format, and come back to me once you've done your homework. Thank you.
added new rules, changed rules, removed rules. They've done that several times, and it's like they've come close several times where they've made it good. Like Duel Links was really good when it first came out, and then they just couldn't help themselves and had to let things spiral out of control.
That's
again.
Konami's fault. Yes.
But anyway, like they could
They
start
want
over
money.
with the extra deck mechanic and just have everything be like an extra monster right from the jump, okay? And I think if they were to do that, a lot of things would make way more sense. There's always been creatures that like there's never really been a place for now or ever, because they had to go in the deck because there was no other designation they could be.
It's because Konami wants to print garbage so that you'll buy more packs. That is the reason. You're not playing How Did I Get Here because you want to play a deck with Digrepher in it. You are playing How Did I Get Here because you're playing draft format and you pulled no good cards. Or you pulled one pack, showed up to a local with a structure deck, and thought the card would be funny, and you're not winning any fucking games. That card is bad on purpose because Konami wants to make you buy more packs. There is no other reason. It is strictly pack filler, and that is Konami's fault.
There was only at the time there was only fusions, only rituals, and regular main deck creatures. But now, if they wanted to like remake, I don't know, Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon or Dark Sage or whatever, they could just be extra deck creatures that like are allowed to be summoned when a specific condition is met.
And they do this.
This is something I honestly wish Magic the Gathering would do too. I think that would be a really, really cool mechanic. What I would compare modern Yu-Gi-Oh to is like if you were to try to play modern Pokemon with Mega Evolutions and Z moves and Dynamaxing and Terrestrialization and whatever their next big mechanic is, like all at the same time.
And technically, we have the data for that. There was a Natdex format once upon a time that did do this during Gen 8, where we had Dynamax/Gigantamax in addition to Z moves, in addition to Mega Evolution. And I'll be honest with you, I think Dynamax and Mega Evolution do kind of go well together. The problem is that Dynamax is a little bit overtuned for defensive Pokemon, and it makes it way too good for defensive Pokemon. I think that they will never get truly to Mega Evolution's peak. I think Mega Evolution is far and away the best mechanic. They will never beat that again. And it was a gimmick inherently, but it was the best gimmick that they could have ever made. And I can't believe they got it right the first time. They really cooked with Megas. And making bad Pokemon good. That was such a big deal. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of does that, right? Retrains of older cards. So for example, Blackluster Soldier becoming Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the Beginning back in the day was a retrain and is sort of the Mega Evolution of Blackluster Soldier, right? They have done that. And they've done that for many cards from back in the day, whether to make them viable in the metagame at all, or nerfing the cards so that they can ban the original card. Substitute versus Trade Toad is a great example of that.
Like you have to keep track of everything. You have to be aware of how all these weird things from a decade and a half ago, how they worked and how they work now, and all the weird interactions between those that the creators of the game never planned for. And trying to make that all work, like, is just, it's such a mess. Like, and this is the issue, and I think this might be why they've stopped making new types of cards, is because every time they release a new type of card, it always like skirts the rules or like skirts the built-in restrictions of previous cards. Like they'll always, like, you know, when they released Synchro monsters, they put a lot of cards out that like summon new monsters, but you can't use those for synchro summoning because that.
And again, that's a hindsight is 2020 situation that we're talking about here. Tour Guide of the Underworld says exactly this. It says it can't be used as synchro material, the monster that she summons, but then she can be used for an Xyz summon. Hindsight's 2020, man. At the end of the day, I don't think that Tour Guide being used for Xyz summoning was a particularly bad thing. I do think that card was very powerful when it first came out, and it is a little scary. But I do think that realistically speaking, the best way to balance cards is to make it so that specific requirements are needed in order to make the monsters. There are a lot of decks or a lot of extra deck monsters that have cards that cheat out themselves, things like Chaos Angel, where they don't necessarily need a tuner. They just need a light and a dark to equal 10 levels. Or Cyber / Harpy Lady in my own deck, which needs at least one Harpy to be treated as a tuner for free. Like the Harpy doesn't need to be a tuner. It considers it a tuner when you're synchro summoning into Cyber / Harpy Lady. Fusion also has it, actually. If you want to talk about fusions, Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon, I believe it is the one that is a contact fuse and just cheats it itself out. Thunder Dragon Colossus is a very fantastic modern example. That is still seeing play to this day because it's a very scary floodgate card. So, you know, Fusion is not immune to this either. The only one that really is immune to it, but not really, especially with the new cards coming out in a few months, is Ritual. There's the new Fiend, like the new Armageddon guy that is basically going to fusion summon himself. Or fusion summon anything you want. It does its own ritual summoning, sorry. I mean, I said fusion, I meant ritual summoning. It does its own ritual summoning, which is pretty fucked up. Check out those cards if you have a chance. I forget the name of it. You'll find it.
That would be too broken now that there's synchros. But now that there's Xyz and links on top of that,
And penned.
those restrictions no longer really matter because no one's playing synchros now. Now they're playing link monsters. They're probably playing both, but you get the idea.
Correct.
Like they couldn't plan for that in advance, and they made these new creatures that just naturally like, well, you can't sacrifice them. Sure, you can't synchro summon. Sure, you can't overlay. Sure, you can't, attack with them. So they're kind of just a body to defend with, unless we release a whole new mechanic, in which case they're extremely overpowered and you can use them to just do whatever the heck you want. Because now you can just link something, and now that new thing that you've linked over it doesn't have those restrictions, and now you can use that for whatever else. So there's so many weird things that I think just resetting and trying to do a whole extra deck mechanic thing would solve a ton of the issues. Anyway, I would love to know what Yu-Gi-Oh players think about this little ramble of mine.
Got you.
This was a first for the channel in that I'm not scripting this at all. I wrote a few notes over here, but unscripted totally, and
Same, bro.
which is why it's a lot less structured.
Also, what are you doing with
similar
the USB mic, bro? We gotta figure this shit out. Come on, man. It's a Shure mic, I get it. Like, me too, bro. But, like, dude, you gotta get yourself an XLR mic, man. You gotta do yourself a favor. Boost it up a little bit, okay?
Yu-Gi-Oh is something that I wish I could be more into, but it's just so totally unapproachable. I hope this video wasn't the normal,
I don't know if I call it
usual
unapproachable.
complaints that Yu-Gi-Oh players hear, because I know like everyone always brings up the silly like Endymion creature that has like a billion words on it or whatever. And
Guess what? It's been beaten. There are longer cards now in the game. Meet an Eacraft. They got so many goddamn words. You can't read them from the preview. You got to read all this crap. There's so much crap to read. These cards are crazy. A lot of them have way more text. I think there's a brand new one that isn't even on this page yet. That's coming out as well in the OCG. That's like a spider, and I think it beat the record for the most text on a Yu-Gi-Oh card. So there you go. That's very funny that he mentions that.
And it's like, look, this is what's wrong with Yu-Gi-Oh! And like that creature never really was important anyway.
I agree.
So, like, I hope these are more like a more realistic dissection of the game and a more adequate description of like what the common person thinks of your game, because it's not the card text. Yes, the massive complexity is an issue. Like the fact that in order to properly respond to someone's plays, I have to know what they're doing. Like I don't know whether or not to try to stop you from doing something because I don't know what you're searching for until you've already searched for it, that type of thing.
I know you know Smash, okay? This is the similarity between Yu-Gi-Oh! And Smash. One, and I know, don't be mad, okay? Don't be mad, Tirzu. You have to play the game. I know. I'm sorry. I have to say that. You have to play the game, okay? You learn by playing the game. Two, you will learn from playing the game how each archetype works. And you will learn the combo strats and their routes. By playing different people who play different strategies. You will learn over time. You will absolutely learn. And then you will be having the time of your life as you remember that Brand of Fusion will go into Albion, which will go into Libellion, which will go into Mirror Jade, and then they special summon Cartesia because they left an Albaz in the graveyard for some reason, and then she goes effect and Fusion summons her using herself and something in her hand to make Granguignol, and then Granguignol dumps another dickhead, and then he goes effect because you special summon a monster, and he tributes himself, and then he makes, I don't know, Sanctifier or whatever, and then Sanctifier special summons a Floodgate, and then you fucking lose and you quit, okay? I know the combos of Branded I know them well because I hate them that much because I fought them that much, okay? I know the deck well enough because I fought them that many times. And I've seen all these stupid routes that they've made over the years. I've seen some of the craziest goo on the planet. You will know the goo before the guy that plays the deck will sometimes. I know stuff that some people who play the deck don't know. That's how much you'll learn. By just simply playing the game and grinding it out.
You really have to like already know the ins and outs of every card. You know, in Magic, you kind of want to know too.
No,
really,
you definitely
really
want to know.
Yeah,
yes,
okay, they're probably going to play this card next. But like,
100%.
You don't have to know their entire card's archetype. Like, oh, this card allows me to search for a Beast King type creature or like Fire King.
You have colors though,
right? Fire Kings. I don't know. Like if you have a card that says search any Fire King card from your deck, like I have no idea how big of a threat that is because I don't know off the top of my head what every Fire King card does.
Okay, but you know that blue is like the dickhead of the group. You know that the guy that's playing blue is going to be an asshole. You know that the guy that's playing black is going to do a lot of like, mid-stack chaining of counter spells and things like that, right? Red is going to be like all in the offensive, right? I know a little bit about Magic. This was vague, okay? You might laugh at that response, okay? But you have to understand that the colors would basically be like our archetypes in a lot of ways. And I know there are thousands of archetypes versus like 6 fucking colors. I get it. But at the end of the day, that is how you will learn Yu-Gi-Oh! Is through archetypes rather than through colors.
I mean, anyway, I was in the middle of concluding this video and I decided to go on a whole other rant.
Correct.
You get it. The game is a mess, and I
a little bit
hope one day that they try to fix it because like an anime Magic the Gathering is really cool. A game where like you're playing with your main game pieces, your main deck, but then like if the situation arises, if you can manage to arrange to allow the stars to align, you can bring out an extra deck monster that's like really, really strong. That's like a really cool gameplay loop. Whereas
I think you
now
really
it's just
like Edison.
It's effectively
like
you're
April 2010.
only trying to do that. You're only trying to play with the billion card, the 15 extra deck cards are basically just cards in your hand that you always have access to.
It's funny he equates it to a billion because a lot of people think that we would like to have more extra deck slots, including me. I think it'd be very fun to have 20 extra deck slots, to be honest with you. Because sometimes a different situation arises and you need something different. Obviously, we're never getting that. If Konami does that, we're fucked. We're all fucked. We cannot allow to have more than 15 extra deck cards. In fact, most people argue to actually do the opposite in order to slow the game down, is to go down to 10. But I actually disagree with that sentiment. I think that 15 is the perfect number, because we've been situated in that way, and we've created decks in such a way that is how things have gone, and we've learned that sentiment, and now we function around that forever. Same with like the side deck, right? Sideboard is 15 cards. I don't think we can ever do that. People say that we should erase the side deck entirely, and they're wrong. That's fucking stupid.
And they're always, and so you're always working towards that. Whereas like, I think how it should be is like, you're playing with your main deck, and then maybe you can sneak in the scenario where you can bring out an extra deck thing.
So you want to play Frog Monarch. Just tell me when you want to play Edison, I will teach you how to play Frog Monarch. That is basically what you're talking about. Or Hero Beatdown, I think, is also kind of like that, sort of. But Frog Monarch is basically what you want to play. I don't like Frog Monarch. I like Lightsworn. Lightsworn is my list for Edison, but fair enough. We can teach you Frog Monarch, okay?
But if your opponent can disrupt that, then you're stuck just fighting tooth and nail with your regular creatures.
You will be fighting with a Treeborn Frog in defense position that will do fucking nothing.
And
but it's fine.
That should still be feasible and still be fun.
Yes, you will be fine, correct.
Yeah, anyway, those are my thoughts. I hope you liked it. If you're a Yu-Gi tuber, I'd love to know what you think. If you're a former Yu-Gi-Oh player or current Yu-Gi-Oh player, I'd love to know what you think as well. But yeah,
I got you.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I hope you'll stick around for whatever the heck I'm ranting about next time.
Oh, you know what? listen, I did a lot of shit talking in some places where I said I wasn't gonna shit talk very much. Okay, at least from my perspective, I feel like I did a lot of like, not punching down necessarily, but just like, you know, saying that something is clearly we have to fix something, or we have to educate him on something, right? At the end of the day, I think that he did a really good job on this video. This video is getting way too long, and I sincerely hope that he'll watch the whole thing, but he probably won't. Regardless, guys, I want to say thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Tearzu, for watching too. I really hope you do watch this. And if you want to learn Yu-Gi-Oh, my offer's still open. I would love to teach you. You can learn the game, and I think you'll find it is just as nice, if not better, than Stinky Poo Poo Magic the Gathering. Okay? Thank you very much for my TED Talk, and you have yourself a wonderful day. Peace out, gamers.